So I do have a background in fine arts, and I'm actually really happy to be able to start with a 19th century piece of wallpaper. I have a real interest in the Victorian period. That was part of my studies. I was interested in the technology of that time and interested in really how that period used technology to mediate the world, to see the world. And in particular, William Morris, who really reintroduced the crafts movement after the post-industrial period. And I love this quote of, "Have nothing in your house that you do not know to be useful or believe to be beautiful." And I think it's a great lens to use to think about the things we keep around us and the things we choose to have and why we choose those things. I don't think William Morris has ever seen my house. So there's many things in there that are not useful and things that are not beautiful, but I think it's a good lens to think about the environments we have and what we choose to keep. And in the movement that we've made from Learn Original to Learn Ultra, we've had to do a lot of that kind of thinking about what do we keep and what do we get rid of. So, on to business and less history. What we are going to talk about is the whole of institution migration that we are making at JCU. The opportunities that's presented in this migration, the uplift that we're going through, some of the strategies and approaches we've taken with the student digital experience. I want to share with you really the story and the guts of the story, not the glossy story, the real what happened and how did we do it and why did we do it. So I will really get into some detail along the way. And I want to talk about what lies ahead as well. I am, obviously, as you can tell from the accent, and the more I speak, the more my Liverpool accent will come out. I'm from Liverpool, but I'm working at JCU, which is the far north of Queensland. And if you just get a sense of the scale of things, really, you know, the UK only fits in the section of land that goes north from Cairns up to the top of the Cape. So we are a big state, and we are far north in the big state. And there's a lot of space around us. And JCU does very well. It attracts students from right across that state, and we probably attract all of them. I think we would safe to say we have really saturated that market, which is one of the challenges that we face and one of the needs that we need to move online. This is our trophy card, 21,000 students, 400 degrees. We are 5-star in skill development, full-time employment, student support. And these are things that we do really well because we are a skill-based university focusing on teaching teachers, teaching doctors, teaching nurses, teaching engineers, and teaching vets. And that real face-to-face is a real signature of the university. We have, like all universities, a 5-year plan. And the good thing about the project we've done is that we started at the beginning of the 5-year plan, not like what usually happens where you start halfway through or towards the end. So we've managed to align everything that we do to the 5-year plan. And the real focus of the plan and the university vision is having the students at the heart of the university, bringing the campuses together. And we have campuses in Singapore, Cairns, and Townsville, and having really one university, one voice, one JCU culture, and really working on bringing that common experience to all those students. We have a focus on digitally enabling the university, like everybody, and I think we hear this, you know, in all the presentations. And we need to achieve growth online, and you could see from that map that you saw before, we're far north, and we have saturated the local market, and we need to go out and beyond that space, and there's lots of opportunities to do that. This is the campus in Townsville, the new Science Place building. This is Cairns. We have the Cairns Institute and some beautiful buildings up in Cairns. Singapore, we are the only accredited university in Singapore that can enroll Singapore nationals. And we have study centres that are in Brisbane, Mackay, Mount Isa, and Thursday Island. I particularly like this one in Thursday Island that I've not had a chance to visit yet, which is an Australian Institute for Tropical Health and Medicine building that we share and do some teaching into there as well. It's a beautiful building, and some of those views out of those windows onto the water look like a nice place to spend an afternoon with a group of students. So I mentioned earlier we have a particular model at JCU, and we do teach predominantly on campus. We are pretty much a face-to-face university, and almost most of what we do is internal. And we've been enhancing that. We've introduced blended learning as a strategy and a policy, and we've been improving the online experience for the students in parallel with that. But JCU really is a face-to-face campus with ambitions to really move into online and really gain those affordances of those environments. In terms of the internal spaces, I think we've done a lot of work on building new environments, super labs for doing chemistry, biology, a lot of the marine sciences, the informal and teal type spaces, technology enhanced learning spaces where students can come together, work in groups, work on technology, work without technology and all the various different pieces in between. I think we've got lots of specialist facilities, a dentistry lab, an amazing facility up in Cairns that groups of students go through in a very structured way. And there's some great tools in here. For example, in this lab, we have a camera that sits on a gimbal, and the academic can bring the camera down towards the mouth, can stream live the actual work that he's doing, can record that in clips and make that available online. And that's the kind of blend that we've been looking for with these wonderful new spaces. We've been looking for ways of bringing those activities and those interactions in these wonderful labs with wonderful academics and students into the online space so they can experience that. We also have a vet school, so it's lovely to see animals around campus. And we've been moving technology into those spaces as well. So out where the horses are, when we do the scans of the horses, we have some screens that are mounted in the stable, and we can actually wire those up, and we can all see what's on the scanner as we go through those processes. So we've tried to bring technology into the buildings and into the ways that we interact with the students. And we want to do much more of that. And I'll come back to that point later, actually. We also just have some of the best research centres. When I was teaching in Manchester, I would dream of working in a university that actually had a research centre. Not a research centre that is in the rainforest or on the reef or out in the bush in Australia. So we do have some great locations. The Daintree Rainforest Observatory has a crane which drops you down into the canopy of the rainforest, lets you collect samples. It's a spectacular place to visit. As is Orpheus Island. 6 nights on Orpheus Island will cost you $10,000, or you can bunk up with 6 others in the research centre and experience it the JCU way. And the farm out in Fletcher View is 600 head of cattle. On, I think, around 2,000 hectares of land. A hectare is about the size of a rugby field, so you kind of get a sense of the scale. About 4 times the area of the Melbourne CBD. So this is a big piece of land and 600 cattle that we've had for many, many years. So these are great opportunities, great places that we can really connect students to their learning. All of those spaces that I've just talked about are really where we do our face-to-face work, where we've actually done all the internal engagement with the students. And we have, what we've done in the last year is moved swiftly into some online courses and programs. And in particular, we launched JCU Online in October last year as our first venture into that space with 2 new programs in postgraduate nursing science, postgraduate data science. And that JCU Online is where I want to start the story of really where and how we've used Ultra as a tool for moving forward. So JCU Online, we established in the beginning of 2017. And the idea was that really we needed to start building some online programs. We didn't really have the capacity to do it internally. We had the capability, we had a wonderful design team and systems team, but we didn't really just have the space to do that work. And we engaged with a third-party partner to do that. So that began in the beginning of 2017. At the same time, we knew Ultra was on the horizon, and we were watching it like everybody at that time, and we were keen to see where it goes. But we knew that by the time the online program launched, Ultra would be much further down the line, and all of that energy and effort in designing the new programs could have been wasted if we directed it to Blackboard Original and not to Ultra. And we took a pretty bold decision then and said, the postgraduate programs will be in Ultra. We think there's enough in there to deliver that. And we made that call early on and did a few things that I think really made that work. And one of them was setting up a second tenancy of Blackboard. And what that gave us was an absolute free space to work in, a separate instance of Blackboard Ultra that we all had admin rights to. The whole team would go in and actually drill up and down through the system and learn about every little piece of that. They always say you can't break technology, and when you give someone admin rights, you really kind of test that. I think I may have broken a few things along the way, but in that time we learnt a lot about that. And when it came to really launching that program, I think we all knew it really well and knew what its capabilities were. So we did launch those 2 programs in October. By the end of the year, around 300 students, new students that we hadn't had before at the university, were studying in 2 programs. We introduced new study periods, we introduced new carousel model, which is a model in which you can take subjects as you need them. And literally a year later, August 2018, we've graduated a first postgraduate certificate student out of nursing science who's only ever studied using that Ultra environment. So we've actually gone through that whole cycle and graduated a student as well. So I think we're at a point where we know that is working for us. So we had to really rethink how we organize ourselves. We couldn't carry on working with 2 tenancies, having the ambition to really go much further with Ultra without rethinking how the team was operating. And we really took a step back from the team. And at the time when I arrived, we were working on curriculum enhancement projects, the kind of projects where you would go into a faculty, you would sit with the academics, you would develop content, you would enrich the curriculum, and then you'd leave. And you would see that, bubbling away for a number of months, years maybe, and over time it will start to fade, and that energy is a little bit lost. And we wanted to move a lot on from that into a slightly different approach to curriculum development. And it takes, I don't think anyone's ever changed the viewpoint of an academic. It's one of those things that, it's very difficult to steer their view. It's even harder to change curriculum. Curriculum is glacial. It takes years to change curriculum, but you can change systems. And if you change systems, it does give you the levers and the gears to change behavior. And I think what we did was we realized that rather than focus on the curriculum and the academic, we're going to focus on the system. And we're going to get ourselves organized in a way that lets us then really tackle some of the systemic issues we've got, not the actual behavioral issues. And hopefully behavior will change along the way. So we formed 3 teams. We have a learn team that look after our systems, and you can see the types of roles in each of these areas. We have a transform team that look after the actual transformation work and the educational change work, and a create team which do a lot of the media development and dealing with the legacy media, which is becoming more and more of an issue. It's almost like digital litter. We seem to leave this litter behind as we go, and we need to think about what do we do with it, where do we put it, when do we get rid of it, and how, what happens when Flash comes to an end and all of those Flash files are going to stop. So we have a team that look after that as well. And you can see we do cross over between those teams working with each other. But right in the middle, and something I only realized recently, is that myself, a UX designer, and some of the students that we will be hiring work across all 3 teams. And that's something that I think has made quite an impact, is that we take a user experience, student-focused view of all 3 things that we do. So we keep asking ourselves, what impact does this have on the students in every single change that we make, which is why that UX design is right in the middle of all of that. So end of last year, we merged the 2 tenancies and moved to SaaS, based navigation, hybrid. So all of our existing subjects that were in Blackboard Original are still in Blackboard Original on that Ultra base. The JCU Online subjects were on the Ultra experience, and we brought the whole lot onto one platform at the same time that we moved into the SaaS environment. And that aligned with a digital-first strategy. We wanted to start thinking about how are we going to move this content from original to Ultra, consolidate and bring together all of our integrations and start making them work for this Ultra experience. From the beginning of 2018, we started the transformation plan itself. We locked in 2 years of time. We divided the 2 years into 4 chunks, and we decided to tackle different numbers of subjects across that 2-year time frame, starting with around 100 subjects in phase 1, high touch, lots of support, subjects that were very low in student numbers, low in complexity, the kind of subjects we thought we could deal with very quickly. Phase 2, which is where we are right now, we're working with around 200 subjects, and we took the approach of looking at our first year intake for next year. Could we deliver Ultra to every first year starting in 2019? As they come to the university for the first time, the first thing they see is Ultra, and they only ever see that going forward from 2019 onwards. And to do that, we need to convert 200 subjects between now and the end of the year into the Ultra environment to achieve that. By the time we hit December, we would have converted 300 subjects, 300 academics. Academics don't just teach one subject, they teach 2, 3, 4 sometimes. So we've built the capacity there to probably do 1,200 subjects in terms of the training we've provided for them. So we can see that scaling very quickly as we go forward and as we learn how to do it as well. So this is version 2 of the transformation plan. So when we first ran phase 1 transformation, we did these onboarding sessions. We thought, this is neat. We'll onboard people into the project. We'll do 1-hour workshops. We booked 6 workshops. Lots of people turned up to workshop 1, and then almost no one came to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we got all those real kind of keen early adopters, and then nothing after that. So we had to do a little bit of rethinking around that approach. So we kept coming back to the whiteboard, back to rethink, what are your objectives? What do they need? And what's the journey that's going to get us there? So out of those kind of iterative cycles, we've built the Ultra Essentials program. And this now, I think, really captures the user journey and the things people need. We do these Kickstart sessions where we originally used to invite people to book consultations. We now chase them for consultations and say, right, we'll be in your office 2 p.m. and we'll kickstart this project. Let's get it moving. And in those sessions, we introduce some data to them. We introduce some reports that we've generated using Pyramid and A4L, and we show them what their current subjects and how it's performing and what it looks like in original, and start to show them the process of how they're going to take it from original through the conversion and the preview site, what the preview will look like, what the report will look like when they've done their preview, and then where their final destination is, their live subject site, and how they're going to copy into that live subject site. So we use those sessions to introduce that process. The problem with working in small groups is that lots of other people want to get involved as well. Lots of other academics around the university tell me, can I get on early? Can I go in the earlier phase? Can I join you in the session? So we have to run a discovery series as well, which is open to the whole university, which is really just our basic professional learning series, but we've oriented it now towards the Ultra work. The journey is complex, and this graph shows that. We try to think about, what are we doing front of office? What are we actually doing when we engage with people? And what are we doing behind the scenes when we're actually preparing for that? And we didn't really have any structure for this until I think we took a step back at the end of phase 1 and listed all the things that we've been doing and tried to categorize them. And we realized that we are following quite a neat path in terms of making people aware of the technology, onboarding them, showing them, letting them practice in terms of giving them sandpits, letting them then build things, publish their content, we review it, and then hopefully those academics go on and be advocates for us. We do have some advocates now. We didn't at the start. We had a lot of critics. We now have advocates, and that's a good place to be. And I think I said, in a session the other day that it's been like kindling a fire. You put a huge amount of effort into rubbing those sticks together, and eventually you get that one little ember that just lights up, and that's the academic who comes to you and says, I really like this. I really want to do this. Can I go a little bit earlier? Can you put me on that earlier program? And we've had that only recently, and it's taken many months to get there, but I think we're there now. We've really stepped up our comms as well. So when we get the release notes for the next version of Ultra, we all scan them, we try them out in staging, we learn what's happening, what's changed, what's new. We test it to see whether it's going to break anything, just in case, and then we go out with comms. So all of that work, all of that getting everybody onto the Ultra platform, moving it into that new environment, is really what we've done to achieve a baseline level. And we're using this maturity model as a way to make sure that all of the subjects that we do migrate at least achieve a minimum standard. And at one point we called it the minimum online presence, or the MOP document. And I think a few of you would have been in the sessions yesterday or the day before talking about the MOP. And I always liked the mop. I like the metaphor, that you were mopping up the sites, and we even had a mop in the studio that we work in the corner. It had a little face on it, and we'd introduce academics to the mop, and they'd come and mop their things up. But we realized that it's a minimum standard. It's a deficit model. It's a kind of language that is really, that we wanted to avoid. So what we did was we rewrote the MOP in terms of what the student would expect when they arrive in a subject, and what would they expect to see in an online space. And we wrote that as the student digital experience. And we decided if we could achieve all 7 items of that student digital experience, then we would have achieved just that baseline. We would have built the foundations of the house, we would have laid the concrete and got ourselves ready for what we then want to do, which is much more accomplished and the exemplary levels of work. And none of this has come out of the blue. We've established this over a number of years, so we did have a very good blended learning policy. We had a good understanding of what was needed, but not the way of delivering that for the academics. So, just back to that student digital experience, I do want to show you some examples of what that means, because at the heart of all of that work, all of that kind of energy and trying to get people to migrate, we want to hold them accountable along the way. We want to ask them to do some specific things. We want them to share their subject outline, the correct subject outline, not the subject outline that they've modified or changed or God forbid, altered the assessment item in the last minute. But we want them to share the subject outline and record a video that just says, hey, this is me. I want to welcome you to the subject. This is a personal presence in the subject site, and we want that in every subject. And learning design, one of our other student digital experience standards, that students will engage with learning materials that are timely, accessible, inclusive, comply with legislative requirements, and are purposefully designed to meet the learning outcomes. So this basically means that we're making content available at least a week before class, making sure that the content's accessible, it's meeting some standards. So there's some things there we'd like to go further with. So we don't use Ally just yet. We're waiting for Ally to become available in Ultra, and we're really keen to push into that space and into that, using that tool to really, not enforce, but to encourage that accessibility level. We'd love to see closed captioning in the videos in Blackboard. So these new features that we're getting now, where we'll soon see the ability to record and add content, using the Collaborate platform, the ability to add closed captioning and make that a layer within the video, so we don't have to hard code it. So there's things that we can do now, but things we're keen to do as things develop. We want students to engage regularly with digital media, recordings and interactive activities to support their learning through the learning environment. So we're being explicit about what the student is expecting and using that to go back to the academic and say, this is the standard, this is what the student's expectation is, and these are some things we can do with that now. And here's another example. This is nice, this example, because one of the things academics want to do is share content, reuse content. And what I did here was I just copied some content over from one of our subjects. This content's quite nice. It's been developed in H5P. It sits in another subject. It's deep down inside a folder and a topic. When we get down there, you see topic 1. I can now import that piece of content over from another subject site into my subject site, make it visible, choose when it's accessible, and then browse that. And that's great. That really is one of the things we're showing the academics, is they can very quickly make content available, reusable in that way. So you'll see there's some of our H5P interactions there that are embedded inside that page, and that's all served from the content collection in Blackboard and delivered into that experience. And you'll see the way it popped open. It opened in a new window. This is one of the things we're really hoping will change. We have to do this little hack at the moment where we do an LTI hack. And that is a way of linking to some content that then will slide it out in that little peek view that you get. We like the peek view. It's, we want to use it though. And at the moment, when we launch content, it opens in its own window. We can't open it in that peek view without doing a little hack. So that's a little bit of frustration there that we're not able to do that. Assessment, students will use criteria or scales to guide the creation of assessment tasks. Again, we want the academics to use the gradebook, and that's not been standard practice. It's been a little bit mixed. Some people have, some people haven't. So we're using this SDE as a way to move that along. Communications, we've obviously a lot of ways to communicate in Ultra now. So making use of conversations, messages, announcements, and being consistent in using that. So trying to discourage the academics from going back to email and back to the student-to-student communication to get the affordances of the messaging system. And then support. We need to link out to a lot of our support materials. The students will have support for academic learning technologies, careers and well-being via links to appropriate services. At the moment, they are links and they're out to an external system. We'd love to be able to bring this content into Blackboard. And the institution tab at the moment is just another series of links. We still don't have any real way of building some of this meta content, this meta level content that we want to share between multiple subjects and multiple programs. So this really is an area that for now we'll just link out But in time, we'd love to be building into the content collection and putting a CMS in front of the content collection so that feeds that and makes that piece work. So I invite you to have a look at our work. If you were to browse now to jcu.edu.au/learn, you'll see the front gateway to our learning environment, and a lot of our guides and resources are there. And if you want to read a little bit more about the Transform project and the way that we're doing that transformation, the website is just /transform after the JCU address. So we've talked a bit about baseline. We've talked about really what's at that minimum level. We also want to look at accomplished and exemplary practice. So we've given ourselves 2 years to hit the baseline, to get the foundations in place, but we've started thinking already about where we want to go with a more accomplished and exemplary level experiences online. And I talked a bit about this yesterday in the XR session that we did, and we talked about virtual reality, augmented and mixed reality, how that's starting to mainstream right now and become accessible in a fairly mass way. So we have, and I'm just going to use this as a case study actually. I'm not going to talk broadly about this, but really think about a case study as a single example of how we might approach this in the next few years at JCU. So I just want to look at that island again and imagine myself there, that's all. But in the meantime, this is a research centre, this island, and the things we can do on there and the work we can do there only happens on the island. And it comes back on the boats, it comes back on hard disks, but there is a satellite connection there. There is data that's being beamed from sensors on the reef, and that data is already online. So you can see where I'm starting to go with this. So where I want to really look next is the bridging of these wonderful spaces we have on campus and the online experience that we've built the foundations for, but want to go much further. So in our research stations, we have students visiting there to conduct research, to do their undergraduate study. We have the schools going there to engage for future students, and we have the community going there. Weekends in the Daintree, you can go bird watching at the Daintree Observatory. So we actually have a really nice system in place already of undergraduate, postgraduate, schools and community engagement happening in those places. But again, it's not visible, it's not online, and it doesn't go beyond the people who can get there. And you saw how far we are away in the far north of Queensland with all that space around us and a 2-hour flight to fly in to get to us. So we're really keen on trying to find ways of taking that data and making it visible to the world and accessible for online study beyond JCU's constraints in terms of space. So this is the DRO. So up on the top of the crane is a bird's nest, and the birds have got a little webcam on them, and there's a lovely little shot there of one of the birds bringing fish home. That was captured, literally with the cam being on a sensor that turns on when there's movement. That 3D image next to it is a 3D model of a forest that is built from live data coming from 600 sensors in the forest itself. And those sensors measure the acidity of the water, the growth rate of the trees, the flow of the water, and it renders that model into a 3D object that you can move around. You can go inside in terms of visiting it in a VR space and actually see the data rendered as a visual image. So we have the locations, we have the data being collected, we have it being visualized in some really exciting ways. We're even a bit more organized than that. We're one of 12 institutions that contribute to the Tropical Data Hub. And that really is a collection of databases of research data that's collected across universities that focus on the tropics from around the world, that is made available and visible to students all over the world. And that little app down in the bottom corner is an app that links to a data set that represents climate change across Northern Australia, that is rendered in a HTML5 Java app, launched from Blackboard Mobile for students enrolled in that subject. We've got to the point where with the new Blackboard Mobile app, we can launch content in our content collection that links to the data that's on the Data Hub and renders it in a way that lets people actually explore the data. You can choose how are the long-tongued nectar bats of North Queensland going to be affected 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 50 years from now with climate model prediction. And that data is explorable, it's exciting, it's the stuff schools can use. It comes straight from the research centres and is made accessible to cohorts of students through this app. So that for me is really exciting, that's closing the loop on the research cycle. So we've tried to put a bit of a model around that and think about, if we have an event happening, somebody goes out and does something, a piece of research, they go out to a field station, they do an observation, an experiment, they collect data. There is an activity there that is live, it's synchronous, and it's face-to-face, and it's intensive. But we want to take that event and slide it along to our online students and make the same thing available to our students who are accessing that externally. And for that, we want to take those observations and deliver them via a webcam. Take those experiments and deliver them via remote labs where you can connect in and access the lab equipment. Or take that data collection and live sensors and render it in a 3D model. And that's great because that takes the synchronous live data, live experiment, and moves it from internal mode, face-to-face, to external mode, fully online. But then we want to go up and move it from synchronous to asynchronous. We want to take that activity and make sure it's recorded, archived, accessible, and then students can come back and relive that, revisit that, and re-experience that. And VR, AR, MR gives us some real good opportunities to do that and relive those kind of experiences that are in those very remote locations. And the things we can do around that are, we can put 360 cameras into the subs that go out on the reef and do the transects across the reef, and we can film the whole 100-meter transect and replay that over and over and over again and re-experience it with the data surrounding it. So this is what we're loosely calling a polysynchronous learning model, moving from face-to-face to online, synchronous to asynchronous, and really builds on the work of Barney Delgado, who spoke a couple of days ago, and his work on polysynchronous learning. And I think there's some real legs in this piece of work, and I think we're at the start of that, really. This is what it looks like as an actual case study, and this is a project that you can see now if you go on Netflix tonight and just search for Chasing Coral. This is a project that is an international project. Many, many universities took part in this. 3 universities from Queensland took part in this project. It was a cataloguing of the impact of climate on the reef that was done across multiple reefs around the world at the same time. It's a great story, great thing to watch. But what I really liked about it was they took the event, which was a deep blue project, lots of money, big ships, lots of people sailing across reefs, but made sure that all along the way they captured content, captured material, collected the data, and thought about the user journey for the people that would engage in that later and come back and experience those things, and came up with some really nice, simple ways for schools to engage in that. So there's a great example, very expensive, research-intensive, deep blue project, thought about from the end user experience, thought about from those kids in the classroom all around the world who can then put on a $6 headset. And unfortunately, the great kind of, the issue with those headsets is they do need a $200 phone that slides into the headset. But in theory, you can put a cheap headset on, experience that immersion anywhere. And it just takes a little bit of pre-thought and possibly a model like a polysynchronous model that lets you think about the live event across those different domains that we've just talked about. And then comes the data with that, how many people viewed it, what did they do, what did they look at. It really opens up a whole new space for designing into. And I think that's really where we see the accomplished and exemplary levels of our model really playing out in that space. And again, yesterday at the XR Hub, we talked about the Magic Leap technology that's just around the corner. We talked about some of the exploration of sensors and how we're now able to really render 3D models in the world around us, almost like in a holographic form, and touch them, and then for them to react to us. And there's true interaction happening there. And the example I showed yesterday was where the sound of touching a virtual object is located from the point at which you touch it. And there's something that happens called a synesthetic response, where 2 sensors are connected, and people describe it as an electric shock. It's almost like you're touching a real object because the sound and the visual line up and give you that response. So I think we're entering that world where we can really make meaningful experiences that bring back that love of learning that we talked a little bit about yesterday, and really take us back to that quote that I started with, which was about actually choosing to keep things that are both useful and beautiful, and giving time for the beautiful things, to craft them, to take the time to do what William Morris did. Was, after the Industrial Revolution, things were being mass produced, the quality had deteriorated, lifestyles had deteriorated, and he introduced the crafting movement to really get back to some basics, to introducing quality and beauty back into the cycle. So, it begs the question, what does beautiful education look like? And where could that take you? So, I think I've checked off the 3 things I was going to talk about, and probably a few extra along the way. And just want to say a big thank you for all the people who have helped in the room. There's many, because I'm looking at all the faces now and seeing there's so many people here who have helped us do the work on the ultra side that's laid the foundations for us to start thinking in this way. And I'm happy to take some questions, and I'm glad my voice held out as well. I didn't need the tea.